Roderick Klein. Let's discuss more questions about eComStation. What are the results of the conference and what presentations impressed you?
Java 6 from Sylvan Scherer with Dimitri. I think it's proof of what you can do if you put a developer on a project dedicated. As other people have seen, is that I partly think it's an illusion that big projects like porting Java to OS2 and Qt4 can be done by small developers in their spare time. I think a lot of people also need to learn that for Linux, a lot of things that are being done are not done because there are only unpaid developers working on it. A lot of major projects on Linux are being done by people who are paid by large companies to work during working time on those projects. And you are seeing the same thing being made possible by projects that are sponsored by Menzies or co-sponsored. There is also a lot of money being donated by OS2 users, eComStation users mostly, and in that way we are able to provide funding to hire developers dedicated to work on these very large projects. Qt4 I think took about 6 months to get solid on OS2, so that are the presentations that impress me, but still it proves what you can do with a little group of developers, what you can do to keep this operating system current with other computer systems like Linux.
Okay, I see. Menzies released eComStation 2.1, and what is the target market of this new version?
It's what I have said during my presentation. We aim both markets, and the strategy behind it is simple. We get our developers from the OS2 community. They know the operating system. We can hire people from outside of the community, but it shows that it's a benefit if a developer has experience with the operating system and knows how its internal structures work and how some of the parts like multimedia MMOs2 work. So that's why we organize Warpstock or contribute to it, to make certain that we can attract new developers. And some of those new developers have showed up this last year. David Azareritz, if I pronounce that last name correctly, who worked on UniOut. Ben Rietbroek, who worked on Airboot and USB Widget. D Sharp is working on an OpenGL implementation for OS2 eComStation. So that goes to show that there is that it helps to keep the support of the community with our operating system. But the real volume, the licenses that we sell in order to keep financial funding available for large projects, that comes from selling the software to our large corporate customers, companies. Mm-hmm. So we target both. We target the user market and we target the companies, as they both have a need. And some of those companies are able to find our product on the internet because other people discuss it on forums like /osnews.com and in newsgroups, and that's how it gets into Google, etc. So in the end, we need both. We need the companies that provide our income, but we also need the users to keep working on the new technology that is needed to keep OS2 running.
Mm-hmm. One question about the third generation of eComStation. The development will require several months. So please remind, what do you plan to improve in the system?
Well, that's what always happens, is that there are a lot of balls to juggle, a lot of priorities to set. Sorry. And one of the things somebody already started working on, Lars Ertemann from Germany, he started working on the USB drivers. So how long it is exactly going to take is difficult to estimate. I think between 6 months to at least a year before we can release a 3.0 version, or at least a beta. But there are already parts of it are being released and tested by people already in the community, like the new USB drivers. But as an example, if you look at the README of the USB drivers and what has all been rewritten or improved, that's a lot. And just today an email came by on the USB developer mailing list where Lars was asking questions about how certain things work with the USB 2.0 protocol. So it's difficult to make an estimate, as some of these topics are new to the developers, but progress is being made. As I said, another half year to a year. But 2.1 has had major updates to support the new AHCI disk controllers, and it also has some new network drivers on board. And in the coming months we really want to start working again on the other languages. German and English are out on the internet, available for customers to download who are entitled for it. And we will also, Italian and Dutch will now not be far behind. And there are people working in the background to finally get a Spanish version out, and translation on the double byte character versions, Chinese. Traditional Chinese is could be picked up again, and the Japanese version is slowly being worked on by Alex Taylor. So in the time that there's being worked on 3.0, we can now focus our resources on trying to get new language versions out.
Okay, but if new translators come, they should start work from simple texts.
The biggest work is always X Workplace, the workplace shell enhancement that we install. I think, if I remember correctly, that's about 1 megabyte of text. But for most versions there is already a copy out there, for example for Swedish. The other point that is a lot of work is translating the so-called guide proc files. These are the text menus that are shown to the user when he runs the eComStation installer. There's a lot of text in that to be translated as well. And then you have the mini LVM, the disk manager that we have, and a couple of other items. But that alone in itself, that's where users should start. The X Workplace and the guide proc files that the user gets to see when he installs the operating system.
There are two large sites, OS2 Voice, OS2 Design, but the newsletters on these sites are frozen. How to give the second line to these newsletters?
This is up to the users, and what I've said at many Warpstocks when I ended my presentation is there were a lot of people in the news forums that are asking if certain software can be ported, or if certain things could be implemented on OS2 or eComStation. My point is that we cannot write the articles. It would also be a kind of press control, because who would be interested in articles about eComStation being written by us in a user magazine? And this is the same thing that is true for Warpstock. The last 6 Warpstocks have all been organized by the same people, basically. And if you start looking on the internet, there are people like me and Gerrit. So if it comes to bringing these online magazines back to life, is that there simply need to be volunteers again that are willing to accept articles, but these articles also have to come from people who write them in the community. And another thing that we've seen with the Dutch OS2 user group, now called the ECS user group, is that most of the articles, when we still had our printed magazine, were being written by the people who were the editors of the magazine. So again, it's the same cycle, the cycle we're in. People are complaining that there's no content, but people are also not writing. So it's difficult to get those online magazines alive again without volunteers wanting to be the editors, but also volunteers that write articles for it.